but they had to belong to the union. And the union musicians union was very, very strong, very powerful. Problem was, there was only one union, and that was the white union of 43, that would not admit black members to the union. So the result was white musicians couldn't play. And it was then that they did form their own union. And they went to, there was a gentleman who was one of the key individuals by the name of Ray Jackson. And Ray went and then organized the union here in Buffalo 533. And that was in 1917. So what else they did, the following year, 1918, that they formed then the Colored Musicians Club. So then they had the union and they had the club, which were both separate entities. And that began the Colored Musicians Union here and also the club. So any of the black musicians who came to Buffalo, whether they would play at the auditorium or at the Earl Langer or any of the theaters, they could play with anyone, but they had to pay the dues to the black union. So that's how it started up until in the 60s when there was the merger of the two unions at the two union.
What's the name of the union now? The local union 533 or?
Now it's Local 92. So they combine both the 533 and 43 to have 92.
Yeah, they just sort of split the difference.
And then the one gentleman who was the white member of the Colored Musicians Union was a gentleman by the name of Victor Eining. And if anybody's been around Buffalo at the time, Vic Eining at one time was what they call the regional director of SCAD, the State Commission Against Discrimination. So he was a member of the black union, and also he was one of the negotiators. When the two unions merged, he was a part of the negotiating team. And what happened also was that when the black union had money, had a building, and had, a lot of things going, more so than the white union. So when there was the merger, the white union thought they were going to get the building and most of the money, or all the money. Well, they got most of the money, but they didn't get the building because the members of the black union had separated the club from the union. So that was separate and everything else. And so that's why the building is still there today and so forth. And but even though when you look around today, you'll find that most of the musicians' unions are not as strong and as powerful as they used to be. Most of the clubs today see a lot of people playing. Maybe they belong to the union, maybe they don't. Maybe they even, you have some members who are union members, some members who are not. Before, if you played with a non-union member, let's say George was a member of the union and we were playing and I was a non-member, or he would get fined or suspended for playing with a non-union member. That does not happen.
So who owns the building now?
The Colored Musicians Club of Buffalo, Inc.
And just to kind of further dovetail off of that, Buffalo was really one of the only ones within the country that had black unions that had separated the building and the club from their union. So, in fact, we went to an anniversary like 2 months ago down in Pittsburgh for their local 471, and they lost their building. So they have nothing to look back on as their old identity. In fact, the only thing that they have to look at right now is where the Penguins play hockey, because that's where their building was. And Philadelphia was the same way, and many of the others. So that's why the club is the oldest running club of its kind left in the entire country, because it never was closed.
Yes, sir. In fact, people talk about Kansas City. There is a museum in Kansas City, but it's a joint museum, the musicians and the black Negro League players. And the actual musical club is in a different location. Everything that we have here is in one location and has been continuously, owned since we purchased the building in 1935 on until
understood. All of this corresponds with the notes. What I was going to say, but you said it much better. I was just going to gloss over it. You gave us actual history. That's why you're here.
I thought you said we should adjourn.
And we're done. Enjoy your life. Thanks, So I have some questions for all of you. Besides the CMC, where would you go to hear and/or dance and swing music during these times? Crystal Beach Ballroom. That's in my notes. We'll get back to that.
Well, there were, you have to remember the era. Let me go back, and I know that George was a little kid at this time that I'm going to talk about. I wasn't around. There used to be, we go back to the area of Michigan and Broadway, Michigan and William, in the area between, they're going up towards, I'd say from Broadway up towards Eagle, north of it, which is south of it. It was, first of all, the cradle of the black community. That was where the black community first settled. There was a street that was called, there was two streets. One half of the street, the first block was Vine Alley. The next block was Vine Street. On Vine Alley was the colored school, as they called it. And then there was also the Methodist, the colored Methodist AME Church, which today is known as Bethel AME, which is on the corner of Michigan and East Ferry. Yeah, East Ferry. Michigan and East Ferry, that's Bethel. When it left Vine Alley, it then went to Eagle and Jefferson and ended up. But there was also in that block was, we would say, the red light district, and there was a lot of action in that particular block in Vine Alley. And there's a column that was in the Curry Express that said that it rivaled the Bowery in New York City or the Barbary Coast out in San Francisco. And they tell a story about this police captain who just got appointed, and he was assigned to Precinct 4. In those days, they had horse and buggy. They had this nice horse and buggy and a new cap on, and he went down there and he was going to show these madams who was king. He was in this block. And about 2 hours later, he came out with his hat on backwards, holding the horse's tail. And so but they used a lot of musicians. And there was a lot of musicians who used to play it within that particular area. It was also the heart in the original Jewish community that was there, that ran from Michigan on up to Jefferson. There were some 7 or 8 synagogues that were in that immediate area. And also Buffalo's first Chinatown. And I think Buffalo's first and only Chinatown was within that immediate area. So there was a lot of activities that were there within the block and a lot of history. It was also the area in which the late Mary B. Calvert lived, and her home was there on Michigan Avenue. Right now, while we've lost, and I like to say that we've lost a lot of black history through the urban renewal and so forth, and those are the days in which people were not talking about preservation, but there was a lot of buildings that should have been saved, and within that community, and the club and the others was right there. Ray Jackson, who was one of the original founders, was hired by the American Musical Federation after they organized the union here. And they hired him to go around to the various cities and so forth, organize various black musical unions and so forth. He used, and what he did, and he also used that as an opportunity to become known, and he later became the most imperial coach Prince Hall Shriners of North American jurisdiction, and that was supposed to be down for 20-something years. But it all originated and came out of the musicians union here in Buffalo. When you talk about dance unions, there were a few there. Later on, there became the Vendome, and the Vendome and the North Harlem were places where blacks go for black entertainment, and where many of the greats would perform. And Sammy Davis Jr., when he was playing with the Will Master Trio as a little kid, did a lot of performing at the Vendome. Sammy and Father used to stay at the Vendome. The others, the Lena Horne and Billy Eckstein and them were associated with more so with the Little Harlem, and obviously with the Little Harlem and Montgomery. So those were the venues at that particular time, because blacks could not go anyplace and dance. And so that was one of the reasons why we find when they had the meetings of the Niagara movement, those meetings, while they had an opportunity to have here in Buffalo, they really was there at the Fort Erie, at the Fort Erie Hotel, there because of the policies that existed here in Western New York.
What years are you referring to right now?
Well, we're referring to when George was born, 1905. Back into that time. And no, but before, the Vine Alley, and I go back to that because that was key. Because William Street used to stop at Michigan. That was stopped, and then you had Vine Alley that went from Michigan down to Oak Street. And in order to get rid of the district, there were those two blocks. The Common Council then got rid of the streets. What they did was they tore down everything on Vine Alley and Vine Street, and then they took William Street and extended it down to Ellicott, down to Ellicott Street. It's in there. And that was the way they got rid of many of the problems that they had there. That was later on in 1929. You also have to remember that during the time shortly after the club and so forth was incorporated, that you had prohibition, and that was when you had a lot of clubs that were organized and went, in order to sell whiskey and other stuff.
Was that club, had dancing in it, or was that just the musicians listening to it?
The musicians club is a little bit of everything. They had, if you dance, you play, they go there, they play cards.